you very much for all attendants to join today's webinar, making the most of freelance talent, when and how to tap in. I'm Alex Collard. I'm co-founder at Outvise, and I'm very pleased to welcome today our amazing panel of experts who are today with us. They will be sharing their insights on the current state of the talent shortage and how companies can deal with it, but also their view on when and how to use freelancer talent. So we're going to try to make this quite alive. You will see that you have the Q&A open at any stage, and also we're going to do a couple of quick surveys during the webinar. But let me introduce our guest. We have today with us Olivia Blanchard. She's a senior researcher at the Digital Future Society, which is a think tank belonging to the Mobile World Capital in Barcelona. Olivia, as part of this think tank, Olivia has authored several analyses and reports on the impact of technology on society from a gender perspective and with a focus on digitalization and the future of work. Then we have Alfonso Diez. Alfonso has 20+ years of experience as human resource general manager at Renault Nissan for all Europe, Middle East, and Africa. But also later on, he took the role of being the Alliance general manager at a global level, co-leading the full digital transformation of Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi Group. Now he's leading the people experience solution at the DXC Technology Consulting Group. So from his perspective and experience, he's a senior strategist on the transformation of HR. And through his career, he has developed a strong expertise on making operations and change happen in complex organizations. And then finally, we have today with us Nacho Rodriguez, who is leading and supporting the new global trend of digital nomads. And he's doing this through two very innovative initiatives. He has founded Nomad City, which is the largest digital nomad community in the Canary Islands. And also he has founded Repeople, which is creating ecosystems for remote workers. So you see that we have very complementary and interesting people today to discuss on the topic of talent, what is going on with talent and where to find talent. And as I was saying, I'm Alex Collard, co-founder at Outvise. Outvise, for the ones who don't know us, we are the leading talent marketplace for business tech freelancers. And we provide an access to a vetted pool of more than 40,000 independent professionals to medium-sized and large companies in more than 40 markets. So having said that, let's move into today's discussion. So today we want mainly to review three key questions. First one is about understanding how serious the talent shortage. I mean that probably most of the ones that are attending the webinar today are quite familiar to the fact that it's more and more difficult to find the right talent to companies. And so one of the first question is, I mean, how serious is it? And especially, I mean, is it going to be like this for the time coming, or is it going to be easier as due to the economic slowdown? The second one is that on top of this scarcity of talent, I mean, what are the other hot workforce trends that we need to consider when thinking about attracting and retaining talent? And finally, I mean, a key topic for us, being a freelancer talent marketplace, I would like to discuss what are the benefits, but also the drawbacks of using freelance talent. But then, as promised, to make it a little bit more interactive, just before opening a discussion with our panelists, let's just go through a very short poll. So I'm going to ask you two questions. Have you ever hired a freelancer for a project? And also, would you hire a freelancer for a project in the near future? to understand to what extent you're already engaged with freelancer or expected to get engaged with freelancer in the short future. So please, in the next 2 minutes, you can answer those questions, would be great. Okay, we're seeing first answers come in. And yeah, here we do have the answer. So most of the people already have hired a freelancer, which is a very good surprise. So we are in front of somehow a mature audience in terms of using freelancers. And and then looks like that even more thinking about hiring freelancers in the near future. So the probably that means two things. The ones that have been using freelancer are happy about it, and the ones who haven't are considering to do it in the near future as a new talent sourcing option, which is really good. So okay, so having this in mind, let's move then to the specific content of the webinar. So this is the section where I would like our guests to interact with us and to answer some questions. Yeah. So let's start with the first topic. Yeah, the first question I was introducing. So how serious is the talent shortage? Is the current economic slowdown going to ease it, to make life easier when recruiting? And also in this context, how can the platform economy help to compensate the talent shortage? I mean, companies such as us, to what extent do you think this is gonna help companies to find the right talent? So here I would like to have Alfonso, as you have a very long experience, and you have seen how shortage of talent is affecting or has been increasing in the recent times, to share with us what is your view regarding this talent shortage, and what is your view regarding how this is gonna affect it, is gonna be evolving in the short term.
Okay, thank you. Alex, I would answer this question about how serious is the talent shortage with 3 points, 3 messages. Yes, of course, it exists. We can produce later. It's serious. Yes, it's serious. But as always has been, it has been always like that. There has been always, since at least, no, and before for sure, I started to work in 1990, and we had a serious talent shortage, extremely serious, in other areas, but yes, we had. And we, all of us, survived. The corporations looking for alternative sources or alternative ways of working, and the people, the talent market adapting to that. So it has been like that. It's serious, yes, but in this sense, I would say that now it's more public, we have more visibility, we are more global, things are changing quicker, circumstances, etc. But it's like that. So I am sure that in 10 years, when we will repeat this seminar, we will continue talking about talent shortage. And I have been talking about that for years. Regarding I don't know if Nacho, Olivia, want you to elaborate on that?
Olivia, go ahead first, please.
Yeah, any view on how this is going to evolve in terms of talent shortage? Because Ignacio is providing a message that's always been like this. My question here will be, I mean, are we expecting, okay, in a structural talent shortage environment, are we expecting this to go worse or to somehow go better?
I think it would be, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to take part in this webinar. I think it would be really useful if we could narrow down or define what sectors we're talking about. If we're talking about, you know, I'm assuming we're talking about the talent that Outvise, for example,
that's a very good point.
Specializes in, but it does vary across sectors and across regions of the world.
We are talking, sorry, this is a very good point. Sorry, just, yeah, I meant to do this clarification from the very beginning. We are talking here about knowledge workers, definitely.
So I think because I bring this up because when we talk about the future of work, I'm always saying, but whose work? Like what person do we have in mind when we're talking about the future of work? Because depending on who you have in mind, their future will be one or another, right? And that leads into, are we talking about men or women, which we'll come to later on in the conversation. So when we're talking about the future, I think it's, and because of the type of company that Outvise is, I think it's useful to situate the conversation in the wider social technological trends that are taking place. And you've mentioned, you know, the platform economy, which according to the International Labour Organization, the rise of digital labor platforms is one of the most significant transformations in the world of work in the last decade. And so there are different types of platforms and there's different types of platform work, but they rise from the intersection of, on the one hand, technological change. So the growth of AI, internet, mobile phone technology, the data economy, and where that intersects with changes in the labor market that have been going on for several decades. For example, the externalization of work, the growth in different types of employment, part-time work, subcontracting work, and the global labor market, the global supply chains, right? I mean, this is another phenomenon that has provided fertile ground for companies like Outvise to grow. And I think that definitely for companies nowadays, it can be an advantage to be able to find talent outside of their geographical location. Thanks to the internet and thanks to marketplace companies, they can reach a labor force that's outside of their city or their village or their country. We can get into the details of how this is for workers later on, but I think definitely we have to situate the conversation in those social and technological trends that are happening at the same time when we're talking about the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So thank you very much. Nacho, your view on this, how things look like in the near future.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, and thanks for having me today. Great insights by Olivia and Alfonso. Obviously, I would like to chip in, adding my perspective on what we called the telework era, which we can say that started, by the influx of the pandemic and how this is affecting. And I would like to showcase just a simple example in terms of how it's affecting companies and how it's becoming an opportunity and a challenge, as Olivia was mentioning before. In the recent months, I've seen companies in the software development segment, for example, just to set an example, here based in the Canary Islands, lose all their senior developers by companies from Madrid that decided to hire remote workers. That they weren't doing that before the pandemic, and because of the implementation of remote work at a global level with the pandemic, they kept adopting these practices. But at the same time, I've seen those companies in Madrid lose all their senior talent to companies in New York because they can pay higher wages. They have maybe more interesting projects for that senior talent. And this is the result of what we call geo arbitrage. Companies based in markets that can pay higher salaries and that are now looking for remote workers at a global level are going to really increase that talent shortage and make it very challenging for companies in those other markets to retain that talent. And the only reason why this has been slowed down a little bit is because the economic downturn that we are seeing that it's affecting particularly the tech sector. But we all know this is a cycle and it's going to come back. And it's only going to get worse, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we definitely see that there is many changes out there. Some of them are making our life, thinking about recruiting talent, our life more difficult. Some of the others are making things more easy. Yeah? Like you mentioned, the platform economy, for example, is making things easy. Want to look for talent outside or geographical boundaries. But as Nacho is saying, also, this geo arbitrage is also bringing additional complexity into the picture. Yeah. Definitely. So what I would like, taking the opportunity also that Olivia has been looking at the gender diversity issue. I would like also to understand from your view, Olivia, to what extent also this transformation of the future of work or the work world is affecting gender diversity. Are you seeing some impact there?
So when the first platforms started to emerge, and first it was called the collaborative economy, now we're talking much more about the platform economy. One of the strong narratives that circulated was that it was going to be for women, it could offer opportunities working from home. It could be emancipatory. It could be a way into the labor market. And for me, it's really interesting to see how we see similarities between the freelance world compared to other forms of employment, like when employees, and in terms of the gender gaps, and what we're now seeing with the digital world and the traditional labor market. So just to situate again the conversation in just let's think about some of those gender gaps in the wider employment market over the world, across the world. More men are in paid employment than women. Women earn less than men for a number of reasons. There's occupation based on gender, and those occupations that are highly female dominated are paid less. So there's a number of gender gaps in the world of employment. For me, it's really interesting when we look at the freelance world, because we see that although there are more men self-employed than women, when it comes to men and women with care responsibilities, so for example, as mothers and fathers, mothers are more self-employed, or there's a higher tendency of self-employment amongst mothers than fathers. So clearly the flexibility of choosing where to work, when you work and where you work from, and to fit that can fit around your care responsibilities. We're seeing, that a number of women have gone into the platform economy, and yes, it offers flexibility and opportunities. But at the same time, I think we need to be careful with how sometimes we push this idea that it's a good thing for women because they can continue taking care of their families. But this is just, in a way, perpetuating this idea that women should continue to have the two jobs, the unpaid job and the paid job. And I think there's also, we've seen it from the pandemic, there's a risk of the invisibility that comes with working from home, and you have fewer social relations. And we know that a lot of conversation happen around the water cooler, and those conversations can be quite important and impact who gets a raise, or who gets promoted. So yeah, and just another thing that we've also seen is there is a segregation in terms of, for example, I'm sure that you see it in your company. We've had conversation about this. We see an occupation segregation based on gender as well in the online economy. So there's more the jobs that are editing, translating, that sort of job is still female dominated, and tech, IT, that's still male dominated. And with that comes wages and payments, and women are still getting paid less, etc. So yeah.
No, that's definitely very interesting. I mean, we definitely see that platforms such as us are bringing flexibility. And the main reason of people, when we ask why all freelancers left their permanent jobs to become freelancer, the number one reason is choosing projects flexibility. So definitely adds flexibility. But it's very interesting to see that is the two sides of the coin on what you are describing. Yeah, but that's also could perpetuate this this role of women looking for this flexibility, not just because of the flexibility, but because of being able to take care also of the household. Yeah, so that's definitely very, very interesting. I mean, from our side, I think a good indicative that we are trying to push the same way. I mean, being gender neutral is that in our database we cannot filter by sex, by gender. We cannot filter by gender. We are only, I mean, the matching algorithm doesn't take this into account, just pushing the best candidate regardless of the gender. And so providing the same opportunities to both genders. But that's definitely very, very interesting. Okay. Any view on this, on the gender equality, Nacho, on your experience, or Ignacio, Alfonso, sorry, on your experience?
Go ahead, Ignacio.
Sorry, Nacho. Go ahead.
Well, in my opinion, what regarding the hot workforce trends, what we have seen here, leading a community of knowledge workers that are also happen to be location independent and are coming from all kinds of different backgrounds and different countries, and are working also at the same time for companies from all over the world, is that we've seen a switch before and after the pandemic. So before the pandemic, most of the digital nomads were mostly freelancers. They were or solopreneurs, or they're working for very small teams. In terms of gender, it was dominated by male. So there was a minority in terms of women who were also not all working remotely, but also taking the opportunity to travel. But after the pandemic, we have seen an explosion and an exponential growth of the community, and also much more diverse community. So we've seen the birth of what we call the corporate nomads. Nomads that are working for the corporate world, but they now have the new flexibility to work from anywhere. So they decide to travel. Maybe they don't travel as fast as digital nomads do, but they do relocate to other parts of the world. We've seen another very interesting trend, and connected to what Olivia was mentioning before, so we call it the nomad families. So families where they both work remotely, and they take the opportunity now to relocate temporarily, or maybe for a year, or maybe indefinitely, to a different location, and normally avoiding the big tech hubs in Europe or worldwide, and relocating to other locations that have offer probably a better lifestyle, right? In our opinion, and also as remote work advocates, there are certainly a lot of benefits, and as Olivia was mentioning, it also requires knowledge in terms of understanding the challenges and understanding how to lead the virtual teams, but also how to manage yourself, manage your time, and avoid isolation, as she was mentioning before, while you're working remotely. So we've seen a lot of growth in terms of knowledge, and how now a lot of new companies and C-level executives are adopting and understanding how to embrace this new telework era. And for us is obviously something very exciting, because we've been advocating for this for more than 8 years, and the trigger of the pandemic has accelerated things.
Yeah, the virus changed many things. Yeah. So yeah, and Alfonso, what's your view from the corporate world regarding these trends, this trend of remote workers? I mean, you come probably from and we all come from an environment where you used to have people working in the office, and now, based on what Nacho is describing, this corporate worker family, and these corporate nomads, family nomads, and what's your view from a corporate point of view, and also to what point do you think that this could also be good for gender diversity inside the corporations?
Good ones, and again, from my age, I can talk that this is happening now, but it was happening from my memories when I started to be an expat and supporting expats back in end of the 90s or beginning of the 2000s. Already what we saw there, when international expatriations were happening more and more, and we were moving, etc., one of the points that we had to be very cautious if we want to keep balance in our people was the support to the partner that was moving. And the support in many cases, especially in those times, but still now sometimes, in corporate expats, the partner was a woman. And then the spouse was a woman, no? And we discovered there, back in the early 2000, that more and more people, when we were offering to them the outplacement package, rather than to look for a local job, they were asking more and more, no, I want to become a self-employed. I want to become a freelancer. So I saw these nucleus and a lot of ladies there that were growing in this, and they are now the ones that have created this core. So this is like that, and I will not repeat the point that Olivia or Nacho have said. I will say this, that this is coming more and more, but it's like that. Of course, the risk obviously is, and it's absolutely fair, that you have the unpaid work and the paid work, and you have to do both the same, no? But at the same time. But this is a different discussion that I'm happy to have in a different moment. Regarding the remote working, well, it's 4 years that I have joined my company, and I have been in my office 4 times. One to recover my laptop, the second for changing my laptop. It's like that. My time is in 6 countries, and I am meeting there, smiling through this. This is a reality also. And with the pandemic, for sure, it has been accelerated, but before the pandemic also. We were traveling a lot to see customers, to see real clients or internal clients or whatever. But for working together now, especially in the knowledge work, especially in the digital work, is not so much necessary. For me, it has been a surprise that after the pandemic, some company has said, no, you have to continue work because 3 days, 2 days a week. It has been really a surprise for me. No, because we need to see the people, what are they doing, come on. But okay, this is again a separate discussion. Remote working, teleworking is good for many companies, especially in the digital transformation area. And as Nacho has said, this has happened. We had people offshore with better, and they were competitive in terms of cost because they were adapted to the local market. No longer like that. They, as far as they are in a reasonable time zone, they can work from Costa Rica supporting Wall Street, and they are doing that. So this point also, it has happened.
Yeah, and that's very interesting, because I mean that you really are sharing a view that this is a fact. We all work remote, and this is not turn back. Yeah, and there's a lot of discussions there about what they call GTO, going or back to office, BTO, going back to office or something like that. Yeah. And there's many corporations, and we see now in the news that the CEO of whatever corporation has said that that remote working is over, that we also could go back to the office.
Yeah.
And what would be your view on this?
Okay, again, I love to talk about myself. I can say that what I have discovered after the pandemic is Starbucking. Because I didn't need to meet my team or whatever, but I need to see people while working, and I am working there. But going back to office, so if the people need to socialize, maybe you can socialize with people in your work, but also it's good that you socialize with other people there in the cafeteria, at least for me. And as I have said, the point of having that as a control, as an HR professional following, I think that the companies have to rethink this approach that, oh no, if I don't see the employee, I am not sure that he or she are working hard, or no, it's not the way now, especially with the new relations, or with, and even more with self-employed or part-timers or freelancers, etc. So this is my point.
I mean, what we're describing here is this also impacting the balance of power in between employees and companies? To make it more clear, I mean, we probably come to a time where there were more employees than jobs, so companies could decide who I want to work with, and we are moving now to a scenario where there is more jobs than employees. Always, as Olivia was saying, talking about this specific pool of talent or knowledge workers. So in this new scenario where there is more work than workers, do you think that there's a shift of the balance of power towards the talent, and that's why the talent could decide where I want to work, compared to the previous situation where the company was telling you where you could work?
Well, the change of balance, of the change of the constant rebalancing of the power distribution is there. But again, I'm sorry to say, for many years. And you are an example. You decided where to work, Alex. Am I right?
Yeah, sure.
Nobody indicated you, or nobody indicates you that you have to work here in Outvise. That it's a very interesting one. So it has been like that. Now it's more, yes, but it's also adapting. Before, and it was good after or during industrial revolution, etc., and the unionization of the workforce, etc., it was because that balance was necessary for both sides, not only for the employees, the workforce, but also for the corporations. Now it has changed. Many young people does not understand the role of the collective bargaining or the collective, etc. So we have to adapt to that. It's I would say a rebalance, but also a change.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say it's like that people now and I think it's good, they are less ready to accept conditions that they don't like. And sometimes it's difficult to have less package or less compensation because they
provide a better equilibrium. Yes. What will be your view, Nacho? I mean, do you think there's something which is behind all the digital nomads phenomenon? Well,
Alex, allow me to reply to your previous question, which is, I think we as knowledge workers, at least I share is flexibility. And I, as a founder of my own company and CEO, I'm also freelancer for other companies doing some sort of services because it's enriching for me, that experience, and to be exposed to trying to solve those problems for someone who is not even on my business, but somehow it's aligned. For me, it's enriching. And I see more and more professionals advocating for this type of flexibility and work environment where they're not only working for one main employee, but they might be involved in other projects. And in my opinion, this is also enriching for the company who is hiring these kinds of employees, because they have a vision that it's much broader than just probably just a specific industry, for example, right? Yeah. So this flexibility, and that it's connected also to what's happening in the gig economy and what's happening with freelance talent. It's also a trend that we will probably see more and more.
Okay. Any view on this, Olivia, before we move to the topic of freelancers?
What I was thinking on both what Alfonso and Nacho was saying, in terms of flexibility and this, well, there's one. There is Spain is well known, right, for having this culture, or at least before the pandemic, that you had to be sitting at your desk to show that you're working. Doesn't matter what you're doing, but you have to be there until the end of the working day, and then you go home, right? Yeah. And I think that it has been in organizations that were probably very traditional before that, the pandemic has really challenged them to think differently and to rethink what it means to be productive and to trust the employee and to have a more adult to adult relationship as opposed to this paternal relationship, right? So that, I think, for a context where we are in Spain, I think that's the pandemic has challenged many companies. Obviously, just a reminder that we're talking about a minority of the full workforce. Most people in the pandemic could not work from home. It was only a few people, you know, in absolute numbers that were able, that were working from home. And I think most people in the labor market do not work from home and cannot work from home and cannot work remotely. So we're talking about a specific segment of the population. And then the third point, when we're talking about flexibility and power and the power balance, I mean, one of the things that we're now seeing in the platform economy is, obviously there are many different types of platforms and many different models, but things like algorithmic management, the importance of reviews, ratings, work being rejected, not paid across different sectors. If workers have to be hyper connected, like to be all the time connected to the app or the platform, to not miss the job that, you know, that the alert of the work, how flexible really is that? Really true flexibility? I don't think so. So I think we can say that when a person has true flexibility and power, when they can really decide where and when to work and how much to charge, and what the price is. And if we're talking about, I've spoken to translators in Spain who are competing in that global supply chain with translators in Latin American countries who are charging less because the market price there is less.
This geo arbitrage that was mentioned.
Yeah, and so translators are saying, well, I'm doing translations that I would never have done in the past for the amount of money, for much less money than I would have in the past, because I'm competing now not only with people in my city but with people in another country. And I think that on a social macro scale, this brings challenges, because obviously, you know, we're not just thinking about New York, but we're also thinking about other labor markets, and this race to the bottom in terms of pricing. So I think if you are an expert in cybersecurity and you have like this very specific knowledge that nobody else has, the power that you have,
that's a different story.
Is very different to the power that a translator has that is competing with translators across the world.
That's very true. So let's move then as the last topic of the discussion before we open the Q&A. Let's move to the specific.
Nacho looked like he was just about to say something, right?
No, go ahead.
Sorry, but I couldn't hold myself when you guys talked about essentialism in Spain, right? And I just wanted to share a short word about my perspective about, you know, what also Alfonso mentioned before, and also Alex, I think, you know, the return to the office movement that it's also happening. And in my opinion, that has a lot to do with executive training. I'm yet to see an MBA or executive training in Spain focused on distributed team leadership, because it requires a totally different skill set from what we are used to in presential environments. And it's totally normal that C-level executives, you know, want to go back to the old normal because they don't have the skills to move on and do things in a different way. They require those skills. So this is probably one of the big handbrakes for the establishment of remote work at a much higher rate, and particularly in Spain, because there is also that culture. And someone is already on the questions talking about the laws. We need to think that the Spanish government, when the pandemic started, in 3 months they had to run to establish a remote work law. Among other reasons, because all the public workers were working remotely illegally, because there was no law that explained how to do that. And in 3 months, they rushed and published this sort of law that obviously needs to be highly improved, because there was nothing that gave a background to this way of working. While remote work, I mean, I know company leaders that have been leading their companies remote for 20 years now. So this is, there's still a lot more work to do, both in terms of laws and structure for this, but also in terms of the training of the executives so they can lead remotely correctly and understand the challenges of leading remote teams.
That's a very good point. Yeah, how to train managers to be able to deal with
remote. In this sense, sorry, again, I absolutely agree with that, and you have opened me a light, because in my multinational environment, and even more in the automotive industry, where the plants were in one place and the decision makers and the field was in other, we were quite naturally trained to do that and to distinguish perfectly. So I fully agree with you that we have to see, because if this has to be taught also in the school, in the business schools, it's very good, because for many of us it's quite natural, but I am seeing that.
But this is definitely, I mean, we were not trained at any school. We were not trained to work.
Well, most of the big companies that worked distributed before the pandemic, they were built around this structure naturally. They didn't they didn't move out of the office one day and decided to start working distributed. They just grew naturally that way. So their leaders inherently had that knowledge, but nobody taught them. They just, you know, taught themselves to do it. But this needs to be
They were
brought
training.
as a general knowledge, like any other leadership knowledge that it's been shared for decades.
Yeah, but suddenly the pandemic forced us to all move into this new remote type of working. But let's move to the freelance space, because I mean, you know that these are our core activities. So I will very much like to understand what's your view on freelancing. So you know that because of what we were describing, talent shortage, people wanting to work remotely, people choosing to also to be more flexible, trying to push gender equality for different reasons. I mean, freelancing is exploding again, especially in our talent segment, which is the knowledge workers. There's some statistics that say that already 40% of people have moved into freelancing. And I will say that in some areas, we mentioned, for example, cybersecurity, but also all which is related to data, probably more than half of the talent is already working as a freelance. Yeah. So what will be your views regarding to what extent it makes sense to work with freelance to complement your natural or your employee base? And let's start with you, Olivia. What's your view on this?
Well, I think it depends, like many things. I mean, it's not black and white. I think there has been a tendency recently to think of work broken down into tasks, and we externalize those tasks. And I think that can be very successful sometimes. But on other occasions, maybe you will benefit from having the person in-house, because beyond those tasks that person does, that person brings other things that are perhaps not so tangible, but that are incredibly valuable. So for example, somebody who does editing, yes, you can externalize that piece of work and you externalize that draft that they edit and those 20 pages, and it's cheaper for the company to have that service externalized to a freelancer. But what you're missing out on is having that freelancer participate in team meetings, providing ideas, being part of that team, bringing in their personality, which if they've got a nice personality, it's an added bonus. And so, I mean, I've experienced this personally in my personal life. When we externalize certain roles, it can make sense financially, but I would really, my advice would be, well, think really about what you are gaining and what you are losing in externalizing a piece of work, if it was something that was done in-house before and you're thinking of externalizing. And I think also something else to think about, is it a one-off or is it something that is ongoing? Because for me also that's different. And when we were talking about, working remotely or working in the office, I think for me personally, the best is the hybrid. For me personally, in my personal life, having the choice of now I'm going to go to the office and now I'm going to stay from home because I need to concentrate, that's the best scenario. And I think that things do happen when people are together that are very difficult or maybe even impossible to replicate when you're away. And what I, if we were all in the same space, this event would finish and we would continue the conversation informally, the 5 of us talking or the 4 of us. And I think that, doing this remotely has an impact, and you lose on some things. I don't think that technology can't substitute everything that you can do in person.
That's a very good point.
So yeah, that would be my contribution.
In fact, I mean, we are putting in a strong relationship, freelancing and remote working, but it has not to go together. In our case, before the pandemic, 90-something of the cases, freelancers were working from our client premises. So they were going to client premises, working from there, at least 4 days a week. Now, I mean, we are in a different, completely reverse situation where 80% of the people that we are placing at clients work remotely. And this has definitely some benefits because it makes the connection easier. I mean, in terms of finding the right talent for the right client, when you don't have the geographical boundary, it makes things easier, but definitely you're losing some connection. And some clients are requesting us, no, I want a freelancer, but it needs to be in our office at least 1-2 days a week, or for some very specific moments, workshops, whatever. Yeah, but that's a very good point. And I definitely think we need to differentiate remote workers on freelancers. Sometimes they are both, sometimes this is not connected. What will be your view on this, Nacho? I mean, on the freelancing space, not on the remote.
In my opinion, they're somehow connected, meaning I think the global adoption of remote work has also sped up the process of the freelance adoption also, because again, going back to the companies who adopted remote work and their leaders understood how to lead remotely and started to use these communications tools, and how some of their workers might have relocated, etc., also allow them to understand much better how to deal with freelancers. Because at the end, some of the changes compared to bringing everybody into the offices from 9 to 5 and having to see everyone and having to, I liked your comment, Olivia, before, when you stay at home because you need to concentrate, right? I mean, you go to the office, you need to socialize. I think that the adoption of remote work will just speed up the process of freelancing. And on the negative side of remote work, we've also seen the adoption of remote work taken in the bad way by a lot of individuals also starting to work for several companies without their employers knowing that, right? So there's a take on that too. So again, I think both are connected. I think some of the benefits are very similar. I mean, flexibility, cost effectiveness. Going back to your comment, Olivia, I mean, having this in-person meeting, the four of us, me living in the Canary Islands, traveling, spending hours getting there, spending hours coming back, I'm not sure if that offsets what we've lost. I know that we have lost something for sure, but if you put everything in stake, well, I'm staying home for sure. So, or we can meet, but on a social event, not work related. That would be great too. Again, in terms of geographic diversity, I think these also in hiring freelancers worldwide enriches companies, because it gives them vision, it gives them access to other markets or new ideas that before, when they were just hiring whatever was close to their office space, they were not exposed to, they were totally limited to. So I see just a lot of benefits, both for companies, for individuals too. So I'm totally advocating for freelancing.
Super. And finally, Alfonso, corporate view on the usage of freelancers.
The usage of freelancers, yes, it's one of the changes on the last years, even before pandemics, for the big corporations. Before there were, we were having sometimes prejudices, not political prejudices, but look, you think so? A freelancer, but who is his employer, etc. There were a number of topics that now they have changed a lot due to a change in the labor market, or the change in the talent market, and many other changes, such as the regulatory ones. But it's still like that. Now it's also the more and more capabilities for having people working from different platforms at the same time. If one of the barriers that it was there, and I think we have still to work on this, is the regulatory frame.
That's a very good point. And there is a question regarding, I mean, the first question we have is regarding this. I don't know if you want also to jump in answering this question, Alfonso. So the question is about the Spanish law regarding freelancers. To what extent this is old-fashioned, or to what extent this is really restricting the future of work?
Yeah, the point there, it's old-fashioned, maybe it's a word or expression to define, is that who is taking the freelancers as an interesting audience, interesting to support in order to fight for them. Political parties, unions, universities, who? And this is what I see that it has to be changed. This is one point. And here I think that platforms like Outvise or other can work on that also, no? To see this and to facilitate this. The second, in line with Nacho, that the business school have to teach remote working. The business school have to teach also freelancing to the business managers to manage freelancing, because it's not the same. Because you can still find some old-fashioned directors even that say, no way, I don't have to pay attention to the motivation. He's a simple freelancer. And this is not like that. You have to keep them well balanced, with motivation, with engagement, etc., and happy. At the end, happy. If you have not happy people, you have a problem. Not all we have a problem. So these are the two. And the third one, and again, I think Outvise or other platforms can do, is that in the side of the freelancers, how are they planning? How are you planning to constantly reskill yourselves? In the companies, we have the view on that, the vision on where are we going. We have the funds, we have the intention, but and I would say you, the freelancer,
that's a very big topic.
have to keep this in mind. Of course, you are doing to keep in your pension, very important, because no other person is taking care of your pension, but also on your reskilling, constant reskilling with all the changes of paradigm. And this, I am curious to hear about that.
That's a very good point. So, for example, in our case, we're thinking about providing training facilities to all the network of freelancers we have in the database.
It is a niche, and it should be also supported by, I don't know, city councils, universities.
That's a very good point. Okay, let's move to the Q&A. We have 6 minutes in front of us, so let's move to the Q&A. There was this first question regarding the law in Spain. Yeah, it's a very difficult law. There's other countries which are more advanced than us, such as the UK, who has a specific rule. They call it IR35 rule, which is just looking at knowledge freelancers. In Spain, the law is mainly looking at non-knowledge freelancers, such as writers, and so they have the law is mainly considering freelancers being in this spectrum. Yeah, so probably there's a lot of things to do. But what we see is, based on previous comments, such as to the geo arbitrage, is that more and more, that companies are engaging with freelancers that are not in Spain. For example, for us, is minority of cases where we place a Spanish freelancer with a Spanish company, then affected by the Spanish law. Most of the cases, we are placing Spanish talent outside Spain or foreign talent inside Spain. So at the end, the local labor or freelancing laws are not yet at this do not yet have this global view. Yeah? Any comment on this? Any of you, or should we jump to the next question?
I have one comment, if I am talkative. Freelancers have been a lot for a long time, as I have said, the lawyers, the attorneys, the freelancers. Have they managed to lobby and to influence in the regulatory space? The Professionals Association, Colegio de Abogados de Madrid, or Paris, whatever, Paris, Madrid, etc. Association. Yes, and this is a point also to have this. I think it's very important to have this lobbying and to say yes.
That's a good point. Yeah.
If you, Mayor Barcelona, for example, because I live in Barcelona, want to be this city to be talent attractive, you have to protect that, as in Gran Canaria has happened or in Lisboa has happened. And
that's a very good point. Yeah, we should be providing the right environment for freelancers to come here and to live here.
And they have to understand that this is a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, if we jump to the next question, it's about rates. Rates, we are seeing very different type of rates. In general terms, for the type of talent that we have in our network, we say from $400 a day to $3,000 a day. When we look to mid to senior people, they are more in the range of from 800. The normal thing we see 800 to 1,500. These are things that we are usually seeing in the platform. But again, they are a broad range. The next question will be what are some of the best practices for managing and collaborating with freelancers who are located in different time zones or regions? Who wants to take this one? Nacho?
I can take this one, Alex, because it's
Okay.
also related to remote work at the end. So in my opinion, first is to clearly define expectations. What are the deliverables going to be? What are the communications channels going to be? What are the deadlines going to be? So be very, very clear about this. Establish good communication, which can be asynchronous communication ideally. Distributed teams normally work asynchronously, but there might be some time where the teams need to meet in person or virtually. So therefore, we need to overlap working hours if we are in different time zones. So make sure that there are some hours of overlap during the day. It obviously will depend on the type of work. In order to be able to achieve this type of work, there's also a lot of project management and collaboration tools that normally teams use to make sure that they have the right knowledge to use these tools and jump into the company's structure. Document everything, obviously, and excel at reading communication. And normally, it's a must for distributed teams, and be autonomous. So I think that can summarize, in my opinion, a lot of the things that are needed.
Yeah, thank you, Nacho. So I'll jump into the next one: potential cost savings, scalability, and how to ensure the right quality. I will say, that this is when being project based, when you do the math, and you're using Freelancer just for a specific project, specific time schedule, makes a lot of sense. I think that that freelancers, you're not paying sick leaves, you're not paying holidays, you're just paying for the usage of the freelancer. They do not have benefits. So altogether, when you do the maths, it's quite efficient to use freelancers. And the quality, this is why there's companies such as us, because what we do is ensuring the quality of freelancers. All our technology, all our processes are there to ensure that the candidates that we put in front of our clients are the right ones. Yeah. And the final question: does it make sense to think that the freelancer can play the role of mentor in projects where he has the deep expertise? Any one of you want to take this final question?
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. For sure. So the answer is very clear. Yeah. So we are coming to the end of the session. But do you want to add anything on top of for sure, or it's so categorical that there is no more comment on this?
Mine is why not, right? Why not?
Yeah, if there are the experts, yeah, for sure, makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much to all of you and all the attendees. I think it was very interactive and interesting discussion. I think we probably could be for hours and hours discussing all this. Yeah, but we probably then also continue the discussion. Yeah, where you say in a face-to-face situation someday with a beer to have a lively discussion about all this. But definitely, thank you very much to all of you. It was a real pleasure. And now we are going to share a last survey or poll, also to understand what is your, some additional information about you and the attendees, and your willingness to look for freelancers in the short term. So I would really appreciate if you can complete this final survey. Thank you very much. Am I forgetting something? No, okay. So I think that we are done. Thank you very much to all of you. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.